Was Kit Bond Missouri's greatest political titan, or did his controversies cast a shadow too long to ignore? For over 4 decades, this Republican powerhouse shaped the Show Me state, climbing from a young state auditor to governor and U.S. senator. But behind the polished resume, whispers of scandals, personal struggles, and bold decisions kept people talking. Let's uncover the story of Kit Bond, and why his name still stirs debate. At just 31, Bond was already Missouri's state auditor, a rising star in the Republican Party. By 1973, he'd won the governor's mansion, becoming one of the youngest governors in state history at 33. His charm and ambition seemed unstoppable, pushing programs like Parents as Teachers that later went nationwide. But what looked like a golden path hit a snag, and it wasn't long before Bond faced a fight he didn't see coming. In 1976, Bond's world turned upside down. Running for re-election as governor, he was blindsided by a little-known Jackson County prosecutor, Joseph Teasdale, who snatched victory in a stunning upset. The loss stung, with some saying Bond's overconfidence cost him. But Bond wasn't done. He clawed his way back, winning the governorship again in 1980. That comeback set the stage for a 24-year Senate career. But was his resilience enough to outshine what came next? One of Bond's boldest moves as governor wasn't about budgets or laws. It was about righting a historical wrong. In 1976, he rescinded an 1838 executive order that called for the removal, or worse, of Mormons from Missouri. Bond issued a public apology, a move that won praise but sparked rumors. Some whispered it was a calculated play to win favor with religious voters. Others saw it as genuine atonement. Whatever the truth, it kept Bond's name in headlines. But that wasn't the only controversy brewing. Fast forward to the 1990s, and Bond's personal finances became a lightning rod. Reports surfaced that his $1.3 million trust fund had been drained by a shady investment manager and Payne Weber. Bond sued, eventually settling for $900,000. Fans speculated, was this a betrayal that shook his trust, or just a rich man's problem? The lawsuit painted Bond as vulnerable, a side voters rarely saw. And there was more to his personal story that few knew. Bond's personal life wasn't all smooth sailing. In 1994, his wife Carolyn filed for divorce, a split finalized a year later. By 2002, he'd remarried Linda Pell, but their on-again, off-again romance had tongues wagging in Missouri's political circles. Add to that Bond's quiet struggle with permanent vision loss in one eye, a condition he traced to childhood, and you see a man wrestling with challenges beyond the Capitol. But these struggles didn't slow his Senate run. In Washington, Bond's conservative votes drew fire. His 11% NAACP rating and firm stance against same-sex marriage fueled backlash. Critics called him out of touch. Supporters praised his principles. Rumors swirled that his votes cost him allies, but Bond held his ground, winning re-election 3 times. And what happened after politics? Bond didn't fade away. After leaving the Senate in 2011, Bond launched Kit Bond Strategies and joined a law firm, staying in the game. His son Sam's return from Iraq added a proud chapter to his story, while Bond's book on global peace raised eyebrows for its bold take on Islam. So, what's Bond's legacy? A trailblazer who reshaped Missouri, or a polarizing figure whose controversies lingered? One thing's clear, his story leaves you wondering what's next for the man who never backed down. Ever wonder why a 2-time All-Star like Rich Rollins vanished from baseball's spotlight? His story's a wild ride of talent, bad luck, and whispers about what could have been. Let's dive in. Rollins wasn't a name scouts chased. Undrafted, he signed with the Washington Senators for a measly $6,000. But in 1962, with the Minnesota Twins, he exploded. Hitting .298, smashing 16 homers, and driving in 96 runs, he earned the nickname Pie, after Hall of Famer Pie trainer. At 24, he was an all-star, a third baseman with swagger and promise. Fans loved him, and the Twins saw a star. But there was a catch nobody saw coming. That same year, Rollins' glove was a problem. He led American League third baseman with 28 errors, second most in the majors. Critics compared him to Senators legend Ossie Bluge, but not always kindly. Still, he turned it around fast. By 1963, his errors dropped to 8, showing grit and skill. But something else was brewing, something that'd haunt him. In 1963, a pitch shattered Rollins' jaw, sidelining him early. He still hit .307, third best in the league, and powered through to help the Twins win the 1965 AL pennant. But his body was breaking down. Before 1964, doctors found calcium buildup in his torso. Then came a hand infection, a fractured knee in 1967, and arthritis that made every step agony. Fans didn't know how much pain he had just to play. And what happened next would shock everyone. The injuries piled up. By 1967, surgeries kept him off the field for weeks. His knee arthritis, left untreated too long, became chronic. Twins owner Calvin Griffith later pushed him to seek Mayo Clinic help, but was it too late? Rumors swirled that the Twins mishandled his care, letting a star slip through their fingers. By 1968, Rollins' bat wasn't the same, and his days as a starter were fading. In 1968, the Seattle Pilots snagged Rollins in the expansion draft. But his knee woes followed. In 1969, he was a backup, and by 1970, with the team now the Milwaukee Brewers, he hit a dismal .200. Released mid-season, he signed with the Cleveland Indians for one last shot. It didn't spark. Rollins retired that year, his body too battered to continue. But that wasn't the whole story. After retiring, Rollins joined the Indians' front office, staying close to the game. Fans on X still buzz about his talent, speculating if better injury management could have made him a legend. Reports claim Griffith's late push for treatment fueled debates about the Twins' medical staff. Here's what we know: Rollins was a star who burned bright, but faded fast. Rich Rollins' career was a tale of what ifs. A third baseman with all-star shine, derailed by injuries nobody could fully tame. His .269 average, 77 homers, and 399 RBIs tell only half the story. The real question lingers: could better care have changed his path? Think about that next time you hear his name. Was Divaldo Franco a spiritual giant, or a polarizing figure who fractured Brazil's spiritist movement? For over 70 years, this Brazilian medium captivated millions with his messages from the beyond, building a legacy of charity and controversy that still sparks heated debate. Let's dive into the story of a man who claimed to bridge the living and the dead, but left a divide among his followers. Born in 1927 in Feira de Santana, Bahia, Divaldo Franco grew up as the youngest of 13 in a Catholic family. Even as a kid, he saw things others couldn't: spirits, like his deceased grandmother, appearing to him. His family called it demonic, but a tragic twist changed everything. After losing his sister Nair and 2 brothers, Franco hit rock bottom. At 18, jobless and haunted by nightmares, he nearly ended it all. That's when he claimed his sister's spirit appeared, pulling him back from the edge. This moment ignited his lifelong devotion to spiritism. But what drove this young man to become a global icon? By 1945, Franco moved to Salvador, where a medium cured his mysterious paralysis, blaming it on a vengeful spirit. This pushed him deeper into Spiritism. With his cousin Nilsson, he founded the Mansão do Caminho in 1952, a charity that today serves over 5,000 people daily, housing and educating hundreds of kids. Franco also began psychographing, writing books dictated by spirits like Joanna de Angelis. Over 250 works, translated into 17 languages, poured from his pen, with every penny donated to charity. Nicknamed the Paul of Tarsus of Spiritism, he seemed unstoppable. But how far did his influence reach? Franco's voice echoed worldwide. He delivered over 15,000 lectures across 60 countries, from the United Nations to the University of Maryland. As vice president of the Pan American Spiritist Confederation, he spread Spiritism's message of love and redemption. His books sold millions, and his charity transformed lives. Many saw him as the heir to Chico Xavier, Brazil's legendary medium. Yet, whispers of plagiarism surfaced. Chico himself hinted at it. Was Franco's rise too perfect? The cracks were starting to show. In 2018, the Brazilian Association of Spiritist Pedagogy dropped a bombshell, accusing Franco of using his influence to push retrograde, anti-humanitarian views. He called gender ideology a psychological hallucination, branded Marxism moral slavery, and opposed abortion rights. These stances shocked progressive spiritists, who saw Spiritism as a beacon of compassion. The backlash was swift, with critics dubbing him the right-wing medium. But Franco wasn't done stirring the pot. His support for Jair Bolsonaro's presidency in 2018, and his defense of the January 8, 2023, coup suspects sent shockwaves through the Spiritist community. The group Spiritists on the left blasted him for spreading far-right misinformation. Posts on X buzzed with outrage, with some calling him a traitor to Spiritism's values, while others praised his charity work, saying it outweighed his politics. This split revealed a deeper rift, conservative Spiritists rallying behind Franco, progressives pushing back. Was he a moral crusader, or a divisive force? As controversy swirled, Franco's health began to falter. In November 2024, he was hospitalized with bladder cancer, sparking rumors online about his fading legacy. Some speculated his illness was karmic, others mourned a spiritual titan's decline. He returned home for care, but on May 13, 2025, Franco passed at 98, leaving behind no biological children, but 685 adopted through his charity. His death prompted tributes and debates, with ex-posts hailing him as a semidor de estrellas, while others questioned his polarizing choices. What did this mean for his life's work? Franco's legacy is a paradox. His Mansão do Caminho transformed countless lives, and his books inspired millions to seek spiritual growth. Yet, his conservative stances and political alignments fractured Brazil's Spiritist movement, pitting moral conservatives against progressives. Historians like Marcelo Camerca note this divide as a turning point for Spiritism in Brazil. Franco's supporters see him as a flawed but devoted servant of the spirits. Critics argue his biases tainted his mission. And that's where the story leaves us. Divaldo Franco built bridges to the spirit world, but burned some among the living. His life raises a question that lingers. Can a man's good deeds outshine his controversies? Reflect on that as you consider the complex legacy of Brazil's most divisive medium. What do you think? Saint, sinner, or something in between? Can you imagine a president who gave away nearly his entire salary and lived in a farmhouse instead of a palace? That was José Mujica, Uruguay's El Pepe, a man whose life reads like a movie you can't stop watching. Let's dive into the wild, inspiring, and sometimes shocking story of a leader who redefined power. Mujica wasn't always a suit-wearing politician. Back in the 1960s, he was a gunslinging member of the Tupamaros, a left-wing guerrilla group fighting Uruguay's government. Captured, he endured 14 years in brutal military prisons, often in solitary confinement. Those dark years didn't break him. They forged a man who valued freedom over wealth. But how did this rebel end up leading a nation? Fast forward to 2009, and Mujica, now a broad front candidate, stunned the world by winning Uruguay's presidency. He didn't campaign with flashy promises or private jets. Instead, he connected with people through raw honesty, promising change without losing his roots. By 2010, he was in office, ready to shake things up. And oh, did he deliver? What made Mujica legendary was his lifestyle. Nicknamed the poorest president, he donated about 90% of his $12,500 monthly salary to charity, keeping just $1,250. It's enough, he said, because many Uruguayans live on less. He and his wife, Senator Lucia Topolansky, shunned the presidential palace for a modest farm, where Mujica fetched water from a well. His prized possession? A 1987 Volkswagen Beetle, worth less than $2,000. Someone offered $1 million for it in 2014, he said no. But there was more to his story than just simplicity. In 2014, Mujica made history again. Uruguay, under his watch, became the first country to fully legalize recreational marijuana. The move sparked global debate, and even earned him a Nobel Peace Prize nod. Critics called it risky, supporters hailed it as bold. Either way, it cemented his reputation as a fearless trailblazer. Yet, not every moment was smooth. In 2013, Mujica accidentally stirred trouble when a hot MIC caught him calling Argentina's president, this old woman, during a chat, referencing her late husband. The comment sparked a diplomatic spat, though Mujica's apology cooled things down. It was a rare misstep for a man usually so careful with words. But bigger challenges loomed. By April 2024, rumors swirled about Mujica's health after a stomach cancer diagnosis. Online, fans speculated his condition was worse than reported, with some claiming officials hid details. While unverified, the buzz grew until May 2025, when Uruguay's president announced Mujica's critical state. On May 13th, he passed, leaving the nation in mourning for 3 days. His death hit hard, but his legacy burned brighter. Mujica's life, guerrilla, prisoner, president, farmer, challenges everything we think about power. Was his simplicity his greatest strength? Or a quiet rebellion against a greedy world? Uruguay mourns a hero, but his story asks us all, what really matters? Let that sink in.